Now, it has been a bit of a while. Oh, my hair is so frightful. It has been a... Pardon me?
You need a good hairdresser.
Oh, do you know where I could find one?
Yes, I do.
Oh, my. I must check with you on that, although I'm headed to Georgia tomorrow, so I don't think that there's too much time. I understand that you have a holiday, which apparently takes a lot of preparation for some people, because I rather think from what your pastor told me that there are a number of people missing today. But probably there is a lot to prepare for, to be ready to celebrate a day like President's Day, not that I would know anything about it. But I asked around this morning, and there were very few people who could tell me about the traditions and rituals that one engages in for President's Day. So I'm rather hoping when I arrive in Atlanta tomorrow that they will perhaps be a bit more forthcoming with how I could, participate in this great celebration. But for this morning, I have not been with you for a while, and most of you didn't seem to remember me or recognize me. It has been 18 months. I'm afraid that I did not make much of an impression the first time I was here. So hopefully I will leave you with a little more, hunger for the way that I can fill you with the gospel message. But I thought I would remind you of a little bit about myself. I am Harriet Beasley Bauer III. As you would remember if you remembered me, you would know that I am a rather unusual creature. I am one of 3 identical triplets. It happens very rarely, but it does happen. So let's go to the next slide. I'll get to the triplets in a moment, but I also wanted to share with you a little bit about where I come from. I actually grew up in Newcastle upon Tyne. My father was from Glasgow, a real Scot, and so sometimes that still creeps into my speaking. So from way up north, having finished, this is a terrible map because it does not show Cambridge, which is far superior to Oxford. Is it? Oh, there it is. Sorry, it is on the map. Okay, far superior. I graduated and got my higher degrees from Cambridge, and now I live down here where I teach in Exeter. And as you notice, I'm right by some lovely sea. So that's where I live. Now let's go to the next slide. The last time I was here, I showed you a picture of the 3 of us together on a couch when we were very young. I thought I'd update just a little bit. We're all too old to be very interesting in photos now. So this one is of us all in our little bit later 20s. This is Harriet. She's the oldest of us. And she was quite the dancer in her day. Now she has a school of dance from which many professional dancers take their lineage, as it were. So that is Harriet, a little bit flighty, very non-scientific. This is, this is Beasley. Beasley had a rather rough time of it growing up, because you might be able to imagine, perhaps, a nickname that she received in her time of schooling. Oh, Americans are very cruel, aren't they? Yes, it wasn't that. Sorry? No, it was just a remaking of the name Beasley into something else. Beastly. That was her nickname. Perhaps that's why she looks a little sour in that photo. But Beasley grew up to be a rather famous writer in England. She writes fiction, which means that I rarely read anything that she writes. But I'm told by people who do love her work that they eagerly await every volume of her work that comes out. Now, I'm certain if I were to read her work, I would find some references, perhaps, to some sibling rivalry, unfortunately displayed in her characters, none of which would actually be true, but it might ring some bells. So that's Beasley, and finally, that's me, Bauer. Now you can see how awkward a name that was, Bauer, Bauer. But it was just as awkward for us to say, I'm Harriet Beasley Bauer the first, I'm Harriet Beasley Bauer the second, I'm Harriet Beasley Bauer the third. That's a bit of a mouthful for most people. So Bauer, Bauer I am. Dr. Bauer, Bauer makes it sound a little better to me. I was sitting for my higher exams at that point at Cambridge, and I rather favored the tweedy scientific look. Since changed my ways, but that was a phase. So that is the three of us. All of us still alive and well. Harriet is the only one of us who chose to have children, and so we share the children among us just as we always shared our clothes among us, although nobody particularly wanted to wear that. So that gives you a little background, and perhaps the next time I meet you, you'll remember something of our life, the life that I have led in becoming a speaker here with you today. So that's smashing, but let's move on. I'd like to see the next slide, please. I am a bugologist, I like to call myself. Because when I say bugologist, people know exactly what I study. Oh, wait, I don't study those. Cute though they may be. No, I'm not that kind of a bugologist. I'm that kind of a bugologist. Yes, I am an entomologist, but, you know, for the ordinary everyday person, entomologist sounds like something Latin that you don't want to have to study. Bugologist, well, people know what you do. And so I brought you this picture of the lovely little firebug. You don't really have them in the States, although I have been told there have been sightings, but none that have been verified to my satisfaction. So mostly you would see these in Europe and a bit in England, but not much. But they're rather lovely, don't you think? And so I thought, let's go to the next slide. They're also very social. It looks like you are all going to look in a while when you're gathered around the donuts. And the last of these photos. I like to look at the firebug this way because it looks like a delightful African mask. And if you didn't happen to see the legs and head and picked it up, you might wonder to yourself, what would be the point of such a tiny little mask? Why would anybody use it? And then you'd see the legs and you'd throw it down and you'd scream and you'd run away. I wouldn't, but you might. So I just find the world of bugs to be so fascinating. Just like the butterflies that I discussed with the children, this is another example of God's amazing creativity. And I love that I get to study it. What a good job for me. Jolly good, as we say in my country. All right, but let's get on to the subject at hand by going to the next slide. There we go. Now, I want to point out that I was not able to bring over some of the slides that I myself had, but a wonderful young man who also has a passion for bugs was kind enough to allow me to use some of his work. Now, of what importance is that black smudge to you? Now, there are some of you here who were here at the 8 o'clock service. I guess that would be you two. So you are not allowed to answer because it steals from them the chance to think for themselves. So, of what importance is that black smudge to you? It looks like a burnt candle wick. Ah, how lovely. Make a little stitch leaf home. What else? Soft and fuzzy. Before I get to your comment, let me ask you, seeing this black smudge, would you buy a gross of them to trade on the black smudge market in order that you might become, as they say in this country, filthy rich?
sell that on the black market.
It's black. All right. Does this black smudge remind you of something you always wanted to do but never got around to doing? Stitch leaves together? Did you always want to stitch leaves together?
Is it a silkworm?
Don't get ahead of me. Does this silkworm remind you of something you once wanted to be and forgot? I'll go ahead and use your word. A what?
A Mongol?
Who is this John Travolta, please?
A dancer who wore fake silk clothing in the 70s.
Oh. Well, we all want to forget what we wore in the 70s, so I'm not going to criticize him for that. Does it seem like the sort of smudge that could save the world?